13 in the first verse. The Holy Gospel according to Mark. Glory to you, O Lord. As Jesus came out of the temple, one of his disciples said to him, "Look, teacher, what large stones and what large buildings." Then Jesus asked him, "Do you see these great buildings? Not one stone will be left here upon another. All will be thrown down." When he was sitting on the Mount of Olives opposite the temple, Peter, James, John, and Andrew asked him privately, "Tell us, when will this be, and what will be the sign that these things are about to be accomplished?" Then Jesus began to say to them, "Beware that no one leads you astray. Many will come in my name and say, 'I am he,' and they will lead many astray. When you hear of wars and rumors of wars, do not be alarmed. This must take place, but the end is still to come. For nation will rise against nation, and kingdom against kingdom. There will be earthquakes in various places. There will be famines. This is but the beginning of the birth pangs." The gospel of the Lord. Praise to you, O Christ.
Now, as some of you know, I live out here in Woodbine, but I love to hang, my place I love to hang out is Main Street, Ellicott City. Down there, I just go down, and I've got friends who are shop owners there, and some of them are from Salem Lutheran Church, where I have my office. So it's just a really familiar place, and for years now, that's been like the place I like to go and I hang out. Well, I guess it was sometime in July in 2016. We were out of town. We were in New Jersey visiting my daughter-in-law's family, and my phone rang at 11:30 at night, and it was one of my friends from Main Street, Ellicott City. And she said, "It's all gone. It's all gone." And I said, What do you mean? What's gone? What's gone?" And she said, "The town. There was a flood. It's all gone." I'd just been there a couple of days before. And so of course I turned to the great source for information, Facebook. And I looked, and oh my goodness, here's all these posts of people in Old Ellicott City, and there's water rushing down Frederick Road. There's cars floating and dumpsters floating. There were pictures of friends of mine waist deep in water, holding on to trees and holding on to doors to try to keep from being swept away. I thought, this is unimaginable. This is a place I just was a couple days ago. I was blown away. This just could not have happened. That must be what the disciples thought when Jesus told them that the temple was coming down. That was not something they could ever have imagined when they were walking through and marveling at the splendor of the Jerusalem temple. Now, this temple wasn't quite as grand as the one that Solomon had built 900 or so years previous. That one had gotten destroyed by the Babylonians. But this was a new one. It was built by Herod, and it was pretty wonderful and amazing on its own right. It was built on the highest point in Jerusalem. Any place you looked, it just towered over the city. It was the height of a 12 to 15-story building and went out over 36 acres. It was huge. It just dominated the landscape. It had several courts within the walls, all surrounding the holy. That one's live too. How about that? Put it back? Okay. Oh, all right. So they had all these walls, the courts within the walls. In the very middle was the Holy of Holies. Hebrews talks about the high priest going in and making sacrifice. That's where the priest did that. Meanwhile, there were these towering walls, great banners and draperies of purple and scarlet and white, and it was just breathtaking. The exterior side of the eastern-facing wall was covered with gold plate, so that when the sun rose, it just went ablaze with light. And the stones that it was made of, these huge, big limestone blocks, they were hauled into place and set firmly and solidly to make these enclosed spaces. It all seemed indestructible. So there's the disciples. They're a bunch of Galilean country bumpkins, and they're on a big trip to the temple in Jerusalem, big city. What a trip it had been. Jesus had been preaching and teaching in the temple, gathering crowds, getting all kinds of questions from the religious experts who were starting to feel really uncomfortable with the popularity he was getting. Now, just a day or so before our scene that's described in today's gospel, Jesus had gone into the temple, didn't like that there were money changers in the temple, started throwing their money and their shekels all over the place, and the animals and everything was running. What a mess. Yeah, if we tried that in Walmart or Target, they'd throw us out and never let us back again. So the authorities were not happy about that. We heard about how he notices a poor widow who puts just like the equivalent of a penny or two in the offering plate, and he commends her publicly. Not the big donors as much of a blessing as I'm sure they were, but he commends and points out this woman who has made such a sacrifice. And now he's back. Jesus is walking through the halls with his disciples. He's teaching in parables and fielding questions from all sides. So then they keep moving, and they stroll out into the outer court, and the disciples kind of look behind them up at these magnificent walls, and they said, "Oh, teacher, what big stones! What large buildings!" So as the disciples stand there, with their jaws open, like sightseers, Jesus drops this on them. "Yeah, you see all these great buildings? Mm-hmm. Not one stone will be left upon another. All will be thrown down." And he tells them there's going to be people led astray in all kinds of wrong directions. It's going to be hard to know who to believe. There's going to be wars and earthquakes and famines. Everything looked so good right then. How could that happen? It was unimaginable. But it did happen. A few decades later, around the year 68, 70, the Romans came into Jerusalem and decided they were going to take care of the Jews once and for all. And they didn't distinguish between the Jews who believed in Jesus and the ones who did not see him as the Messiah. They just leveled the place. They destroyed homes, they destroyed shops, they destroyed fields, and they tore down that indestructible temple. People fled for their lives. Everything that they had counted on was gone. It's unimaginable. What do you do when the unimaginable worst happens? Well, for our Community of St. Dismas folks, I've been told many times that for them, that unimaginable worst moment was the moment they got caught. Never thought they'd get caught. They got caught and cuffed and thrown in the back of a police van, and the door slammed shut, and they thought, I didn't imagine this happening. For us, there are those unimaginable things that blindside us. A loss we didn't expect. A loss of a relationship that we thought was rock solid. A change in our life that comes upon us that we didn't expect and we didn't want. It was like that for those worshipers in that indestructible temple in Jerusalem. So when the disciples hear from Jesus that this is going to happen, they're shocked and they're scared and they're panicking, and they can't wait to ask Jesus for specifics. Okay, so when is this going to happen? How's it going to happen? What are the signs? What can we look for here? And Jesus responds, this is just the beginning of the birth pangs. Now, as some of you might know, and I know there were people at the 9 o'clock service who know this, I was a childbirth educator and labor coach for 35 years. And there are actually people at the 9 o'clock service who were in my class many years ago. And I've been to enough births to know that it is always a painful and messy process. It's never easy. And there is a point at which the laboring woman feels like this will never end, and she just wants to give up. And she wants to know, okay, how much longer is until my baby is born? How do I know this is going to be? What are the signs? Well, what are the signs this is going okay? Am I going to be okay? Is my baby going to be okay? And she's done. I'm not doing this anymore. And that's usually the point at which she grabs Father by the skin of his scalp, and tries to twist his head off of his shoulders. So like the disciples, the women in labor want to know when all this is going to take place, and what are the signs that will signal that this is going the way it's supposed to. Now, if you're a smart labor coach, you don't try to answer that question. You don't know the answer, and if you do try to answer it, you're just going to make her more anxious or mad enough to throw a bedpan at you. What you do in that moment is you take her hand and assure her that you'll stay with her and that she won't have to do this alone. Now, the disciples asked Jesus in panic, what are the signs? How are we going to know this is going to work out? And Jesus didn't answer that question either. What he did was he promised to stay with us. And he promised us, with his life, with his death, with his new life, that we will never have to do it alone. So listen to that message and take heart. Birth pangs are never easy, but God is working. God's always, always working to bring new life in the pain and the messiness and the unpredictability of this creation. We may not have an exact blueprint of the future. Those unimaginable things come and blindside us. That those indestructible temples come down. But we have the assurance through the one who was himself willing to be torn down, to die on a cross, and to birth new life out of an empty tomb. Listen not only to that message, but look at the messenger. The one, Jesus, whose birth was heralded with the words, "Fear not," who repeatedly told his followers, do not fear, but believe, trust. The one who came to carry our burdens and carry them by walking right alongside us. This Jesus says, yeah, this is the harsh reality. Stones can come crashing down. Things we thought were indestructible can come crashing down. The ground can shake. There will be human delusion and pain and hurt. But we have a God of new life, new beginnings, even when it looks like our world is falling apart. Now, it would be really nice to know how everything's going to turn out. When will the pain stop? When will this new life come? What will it look like? Jesus didn't give us any of that information. What he gave us is himself. That one, Jesus, who showed us a God who wants to be with us, who stays with us in the midst of our painful and messy birth pangs, and who calls us to stay with others and do his work. He builds us up and assures us of new life. Amen.